During the big picture on the Arctic state of affairs, the geopolitical tensions in the regions were discussed, as well as climate change and challenges to research. With me on Arctic Frontiers Offstage today to comment on this session, I have David Balton, Senior Fellow with the Belfer Centers Arctic Initiative, Johanna Ikävalko, Director of Center for Geopolitics, Peace and Security at UiT, the Arctic University of Norway, and Olga Levleva, PhD student at the University of Groningen, Arctic Frontiers Emerging Leader for 2026 and Arctic Youth Network member. Welcome to all of you. So let's start with you, David. After this discussion on the Arctic state of affairs, you said you had several takeaways, but what was your main takeaway from the session?
Well, the main takeaway was a focus on Greenland, and there was virtual unanimity among the speakers in support of territorial integrity and self-determination of the Greenlandic people, that they need to stand up for their rights to determine their own future.
Governor General Mary Simons also said something that made an impression on you.
Yes, that despite the increased attention to the security agenda, there are other very important things going on in the Arctic, and at the end of the day, we're all in this together.
Olga, that was also something you took note of during the session, that we're all in this together. Do you want to say a bit about why you felt that was so important to you?
So the main takeaway was that climate change is the long-term security issue, and that is important for me as a scientist and also as youth, because it is about future of my generation and also next generations, and we need to keep this agenda afloat and talking, and not only talking but also taking actions. So that's why.
There was also a large focus on research, and that is something you took note of, Johanna. Do you want to expand a bit about the research part of the discussion?
Yes, gladly. Because I'm representing research, I tend to pick up these messages that are related to research very easily. And it's very obvious now that there is a common understanding of the elevated need for research to actually tackle the questions that we have in our hands, and also to make sustainable decisions. But then also what was brought up by Åsa Renneman during the panel discussion was all these challenges that the research community is facing at the moment and also in the future, and there were actually quite many of them.
What were like the main challenges that research faces now?
Well, one of the main challenges is that there are these there would be these demands for international collaboration in research, and that has become more and more difficult actually. And then the other is, which was also, and that was really something that I haven't thought about before, is that we are losing, or we may be losing, especially in the US, the new generation of researchers. And that is really a very, very big threat.
We're losing the next generation of researchers, and it was specified in the US. Do you want to comment upon that?
I think it is a real threat. The positions that young people coming out of graduate school might have hoped to have in the United States government may no longer be there. The grants for research in climate science and other important fields of science is drying up. Yeah, it's a difficult time. I do believe that this time will pass, but it doesn't make this time itself any less difficult.
Olga, you're a PhD student, and you are actually part of this next generation of researcher. You're not based in the US, but do you agree on the threat for the next generation?
Yes, absolutely. I am based in the Netherlands, and even in the Netherlands, in Central Europe, we see that as well, movement of money from education to military sector. And last year we were protesting against the budget cuts in education, and basically science is now manipulated by money, because we need to fight for money for our research, and if the field is not interesting for the policymakers, there is no money, and we need to motivate that.
What do you think would be the way forward?
To invest more money in education and youth engagement, and also to make science accessible and comprehensible for wider audience. Because we as scientists, we need to work on engagement with wider public, and especially if it is social science in the Arctic, we need to work with communities and reassure that after we are done with our research projects, we return to those communities and talk to them and give back the knowledge, especially when we work with indigenous peoples.
What do you think about that, Johanna?
Oh, it sounds very, very wise and sort of a natural conclusion. So absolutely agree.
Mm. So David, you had 3 highlights when I asked you the first time. Do you want to touch upon another of them?
Yes, another has to do with climate change, and some my colleagues have already spoken about this. It is the long-term security problem in the Arctic. The Arctic is warming on average 3 to 4 times as fast as any other part of the planet, depending on the metrics used, and we need to get back to that agenda. The United States needs to come back to be a leader in this instead of a problem in this. The Arctic Council has a great deal of its focus on climate change, and I was glad to hear, considerable support for keeping the Arctic Council relevant and moving forward despite its challenges, and this is important, including for reasons related to climate change.
Because the Arctic Council right now, my impression is that we're keeping it going despite it not being what it used to be.
Yes, it has unfortunately fallen on harder times. Not so long ago, it was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. It was a model intergovernmental forum. Other parts of the world were looking at the Arctic Council, thinking how they could create things like it for their regions. Today, the Arctic Council is not meeting in person, the working group's only virtually, and it's not meeting at all at the political level. It is struggling.
So what do you think could be, you already mentioned the part that we're in this together as like a very beautiful moment of the session that we just had. Did you see any other parts of the discussions where you saw a bright future for the Arctic?
Yes, people in the Arctic need to think long-term as well as short-term. And in the long term, the problems we are encountering today will be past us at some point. There was a long period from the end of the Cold War until fairly recently where the Arctic was an exceptional region marked by a high degree of international collaboration. And it's my hope that we can return to that before too long.
Mm. Olga, as your last question, we are hoping to return to a higher degree of international collaboration in the Arctic. What do you, if you were to imagine, how would it look like?
Well, I hope that Arctic Council would return to in-person meetings and playing a central role in communicating. And I hope to return to a high degree of science diplomacy in the Arctic, because international collaboration in the Arctic in high latitude is important. It's inalienable, and we cannot do research without Russian part of the Arctic. We need that data to make more, to predict more. Sorry. I'm just blanked out.
No worries. You were talking about how we need scientific data collected in the Arctic. Were you thinking about, or?
Yeah, to make the future more predictable and to make better decisions on how to mitigate the consequences of climate change for the Arctic. Not only European, Northern American part, but also including Russian part, and also including indigenous groups in the Arctic and Northern America and in Europe.
Yeah, Johanna, what do you think? What is our next step to?
Well, I think that the next step, first of all, I'm taking also a little bit of a Finnish perspective, because I saw the consequences of Russia's attack war to Ukraine, what it caused to research collaboration. So I think that the first thing that needs to happen is that there is no war between Russia and Ukraine. And then after that, now the doors to Russia, they are closed, but they are not locked. That we gradually then start opening the doors. And I think that science and science collaboration and science diplomacy are those best ways to actually start rebuilding connections with Russia, because we all need, Russia included, we all need science collaboration. We need to monitor the Arctic, the Pan-Arctic, and we need to study the Arctic, and we need to be reporting from the Arctic by the Arctic. So all this is needed, but there is one prerequisite, and that is that the war has to end.
Last comment from you, David. What is our next step?
I think Johanna is right. We do need to re-engage with Russia, but that can only happen once the war in Ukraine comes to a reasonable resolution. Yes, science is a way forward to start rebuilding collaboration and trust, but there are other things as well. For example, in the United States, we have a long border region with Russia on the other side of the Arctic. And even during the Cold War, we worked with the Soviets on a wide variety of things that today we don't work on with them. Slowly, we need to return to that areas of mutual interest.